Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to a brand new episode. And in this one, we've got ourselves a Honda VFR 750. So we ended up with this one because the previous owner had had enough of the bike. He'd ended up misfueling it by accident, and now it doesn't run. He did have it running on the diesel that he'd put in there, but obviously that's now gone through the system. The bike was smoking quite heavily, cut out. He did decide to start taking some bits and pieces off to see if he could resolve it himself, but he just ended up getting to a point where he'd had enough of it. The bike's now got a flat battery, also it's run out of MOT, so we've got quite a job on our hands to get all this thing back up and road ready so we can get out and enjoy it. So my plan is I'm going to take the tank off, give that a real good clean out, drain all of the diesel out, rinse that out with some fresh clean fuel and give that a once over. We're also going to take the carbs off, strip those down. I went ahead and got myself a repair kit for those, so we're going to give those a bit of an overhaul, give them a good clean, fit all of that kit in there, then we can get those all sorted and we know that they're okay. Also went ahead and got a battery for the bike as well, so that we can pop a brand new battery on there and we're not going to have any issues when it comes to flat batteries or trying to start the bike, other than if it will run. Fingers crossed it will once we've done the bits we need to. So what I'll do is I'll grab the camera and show you around the bike. So as I may have already mentioned, I went ahead and grabbed the carb rebuild kit that we're going to use, and I've also gone ahead and grabbed a brand new battery. So what I'm going to start with now is just by taking the seat off, getting that out of the way, taking the tank out of the way. We can drain the fluid down in that. I do believe there is petrol in there because I think the guy did try and drain the fuel out, drain out that diesel and just flush the tank through with petrol. But what we'll do is we'll do that again just to make sure. Then we can start looking at gaining access and taking the carburetors out. I also want to get access to some cabling here, I believe, for the to do with the carbs as well, because it feels as if you've got like a dial here and it feels as if the cables have come loose on that. So I want to have a good look at that as well. So what we'll start with doing is stripping all this stuff down, and then we can get to those carbs. There should be a bolt that goes right the way through there, but that's not there. Okay, so that cable is for the fuel tap by the looks of it, or that cabling. So we're just going to need to untuck that. Some very interesting welding on the frame there. So that's just those two cables there. And then we've just got one fuel pipe. It's just got a little clip, a spring clip that holds it on. And then just a fuel level gauge as well. And that. Oh, yeah, it smells somewhat petrol-y. What I have also noticed is just tucked behind this fairing here, there is like an inline fuel filter, so I'm going to look at taking that out. Probably at first I'll look at just cleaning it, and then if I can get hold of one I'll replace it. So I'm going to take this panel off out of the way here and pop the airbox off as well. And then we can start working our way into there. As I just mentioned a moment ago, the welding, I wasn't quite sure if this has been re-welded at some point, but it certainly, I know some of the factory welds are not perfect, but that one there certainly doesn't look particularly great. Maybe that was a Friday afternoon one. So the air filter there, we want to replace that later because that's fairly dirty. So we're just gently folding these retainers out the way. So we've now taken off the airbox and the top housing there, and we've got really nice access to the carbs on these, which is great. So we just continue disassembling all the bits we need, some of this pipe work. We've got the cabling up here for the throttle on the side here, and then we've got the choke cable up here as well, so we can look at starting to disconnect some of this lot and getting these carbs disconnected from the bike. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop these side fairings off, because where the carburetor tubing is that holds it, or part of the inlet as it were, basically I need to gain access to those. It's got like some Jubilee clips that hold them in place. Basically I just need to gain access to them so that I can undo them, but the clip is sort of positioned in between the gaps in the frame here, behind this fairing. So we're just going to look at popping this fairing off out the way, and then that should give us access that we need. So yeah, that's now given us access just to these sort of Jubilee clips with a little Phillips or a positive drive screw there, that we can then undo those. There's no harm in taking these fairings off. I want to have a good look round anyway, so it makes sense to do so. Just have a good check round, make sure we can't see any obvious signs of things that we need to look at repairing or anything like that. So I'll just grab the camera quick and just show you what I'm looking at down in here. So we've got the throttle cable that we can now gain a bit more access to the lower one. We managed to undo the top one, but we can now gain access to the lower one. And then just tucked in there, you might not be able to see it on the camera, but you've just got these little Jubilee clips, as I mentioned, just tucked in there, that we can now undo to pull the carbs out. I've now managed to disconnect all of the, or undo all of the 4 Jubilee clips that hold the carbs on, with the rubber inlet boots, as I said a moment ago. So hopefully we should now be in a position to wiggle this free. There may be a couple of bits on the underside that we need to get access to. I've taken the throttle cables off as well, so they're out of the way. We've taken the fuel pipe off, and so far working on this has been really nice. Everything's fairly accessible. Yeah, it just seems to be well put together, which is great, and I fingers crossed, hope that we can get this thing started and running and back on the road, because I absolutely cannot wait to ride this thing. I've had a quick sit on it already and it feels super comfy. So yeah, we'll carry on, and as I say, hopefully we'll be able to get this thing going and get out on the road on it. So I'm just applying some real gentle pressure on that evenly. That's it. So just going nice and gentle, evenly. Then we've just got the idle cable just there. There we go. So that's all that assembly off out the way. So I'm just going to pop that over on the bench, and then as you can see here, we're going to cover these up so that we don't drop anything into those, get any dust and dirt in there while we're working on this lot. So the first thing I've done before I disassemble any of this, I've just taken a photo of it as it is, so that if I do get confused where any of the bits go back, hopefully I've got a photo to refer to. So what I'm going to start off by doing is just flipping them over. They're going to undo all of these screws here so that I can separate the carbs from one another, preferably without fuel pouring everywhere. And that fuel does smell more like paint than fuel. Need to make sure we clean all those tubes out thoroughly then. Now that I've got them all separated from one another, I'm going to go ahead and clean all these pipes out off camera, just so that, you know, they're all clean and I know that they're all okay. I have just gone ahead and pre-loosened these 4 screws here to take the bottom bowl off, and then these 4 screws up here as well. I do believe in the replacement kit, just looking at it, on the packaging there, it looks as if it comes with lots of new screws and bits and pieces. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take one carb apart at a time, clean it all out, and then what I'll do is off camera I'll just do the other 3, because once you've seen one you get the idea of it. We can then put them all back together and then look at popping them on the bike. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and disassemble the rest of this carb, and then we can open up the kit, see exactly what's in there, give everything a good clean and replace all the bits that we've got. There's a bit of dirt and grime in there. Plenty of dirt and grime in there. And that lovely old paint smell. So the kit I've gone for is a WRP kit, and I'm just laying it out here, and it's nicely packaged so that it's all separated. So I've got the seals here, the jets here, the needles and some other bits and pieces as well, and then just some replacement screws there, because these do get quite tight, these screws, over time, and as you can maybe able to make out previously, probably not on that one, but you can see a little bit where people have taken them off before and they're just starting to wear a bit, so it's nice that they come with that. I will leave a link in the description for these kits. I just got them online, may well help you out find them. I think they do a range of different kits for different bikes, different applications and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just going to crack on and clean all of the carb out now. Probably put this to one side, disassemble the rest of it, clean that out. I've now disassembled everything off of this carburetor, and I've given the carburetor sort of housing or the assembly a good clean with the tools that I've got. And in the future, what I do want to look at doing is probably getting myself one of those ultrasonic cleaners. It's come up clean enough inside, but it's just some staining on the outside, which would be really nice to see if we could you know, make that look a bit better in the future. So what I did with the kit was I just separated it into four. And it came in 4 bags, so I was just able to just pop one of each into the bags that came with it, and then just pop them with each carburetor, as you can see at the back there. So now I've just sort of laid some of this stuff out here, taken off various other bits and pieces as I just mentioned, given all of those a good clean as well. So what I'm going to look to do now is just reassemble all of this stuff back onto here, and then put this one out the way as done, and then we can just work our way through the others. What I have done as well is I've just blown all of the ports and bits and pieces out with the air compressor, just to make sure that they're all nice and clear. These are really neat. They've got a little filter element in them. So just make sure you pop that little washer on there as well. I very much doubt that that's going to stay there. I wasn't wrong. I'll put that on later. So that's now all clipped into place there. So that's this one all now good to go. I did have to just undo the top section of this one here just so I could remind myself where the washer sat on the needle here. So the washer sits on the top there, which then sits the other way round like that in the carb, but I just wanted to double check that that was okay. So we've now gone ahead and, as I say, cleaned all of this one, put all the new bits and pieces in there that we've got, the new seals, the new jets, springs and various other bits and pieces in the kit. So what I'm going to do now off camera is, just as I mentioned, do all of the carbs, and then we'll put them all back together and we'll cut back in when I've got them all back together, and then potentially either on that assembly that we took apart this morning, or if not, just laid out as we had them earlier, and then we'll go back and look at putting them back on the bike. One thing I forgot to show was just regarding replacing the idle control valve on the carb. So you've got this little screw here which is set at the factory. So what you need to do is just make sure that the number of turns that you undo, you just write it down or mark it somewhere or try and remember it, and then what we're going to do is replace that for these. So we've got another needle, there's a spring, a washer and a tiny little seal that just seals that in there. So I've gone ahead and replaced it on all the others. I'm just going to finish up by replacing it on this one, but I thought I'd just take you through replacing that because, as I say, I'd forgotten to do it in the first one. So we've got the spring, the little washer and then the rubber O-ring on the end of that idle needle, and we're just going to pop that back into here, and then we're going to just turn that in the same number of turns that we turned the old one out. So we'll get that sorted and then we'll pop all of these back together. We've now managed to get all the carb assembly back together. It was a lot easier taking it apart than it was putting it back together. It was a little bit of a fiddle to get all of those springs in, get all the bits and pieces in place that we needed to. So what we can look at doing now is getting this fitted back to the bike. So just remove these little bits of paper that I've had in here, as I mentioned earlier in the video, just to cover up anything going down into the inlet. We want to avoid that where possible. Just make sure that I'm not going to trap anything. Everything I need is going to end up all accessible. And that's that one. So we just give those a real good push down, make sure they're seated. I'm just going to go ahead and do up those rubber boots now that they're in place. And just bring that idle screw round while we're here. That just tucks in just on a little peg on the side there. So they're all now nice and tight. So I'm just going to look at the two throttle cables, getting those plumbed in, and also the choke cable as well. Just tightened off the throttle cables, and then I'm just checking that they work, as you can see down in here, just to make sure. Get a nice smooth operation, no issues there. I've just put the fuel tap cable in just through there. And I'm just putting this fuel hose on now. Just popping that on there. Then what I can look at doing next is just putting those rubber seals back on that we had earlier. I've just put a tiny little bit of red rubber grease around each one of these seals, just in some little spaces or little spots, just so that it tries to hold the seals in place, because when I'm trying to fit this assembly, he keeps trying to push the seals off and I don't want them to come off and get caught. So I'm just trying to gently get this on and in place. We're going to try and just tighten this all down nice and evenly, just to bring it down and into place. I've only just run those down with this. I don't want to go mad with that. I'll do it up with the actual screwdriver itself. So we can just peen these back over. Just pop those two little clips on there. I'm also going to pop the battery on there. Oh, we've got a clock. We've got a clock on the dashboard. Right, that's all packed in there now. So just for the first start, what I am going to do is just pop the air filter back in and the cover back on, just in case there's any dirt or anything on the bottom of the tank. I don't want it to drop straight into the carbs that we've just cleaned. As I mentioned before, I will get a new filter, give all of that a once over. What I'm also not going to do is connect these just for now. I'm just going to turn the fuel tap to the on position, so that I know that I've got fuel coming down to the carbs, and then because we'll need to balance the carbs, so I don't want to go too mad putting all the tank and everything back on in place, only to find that we have to take it all back off again anyway. So just run these gently down with the impact gun. I'm not going tight with them. So that's all of that back in place. We've given this a bit of a rinse out with some fuel. There is a bit of fuel in there that I've just left in there. And I'll put a little bit more in before we try and start it for the first time. I'm not going to plug the fuel gauge or anything like that in for the minute either. The only thing I'm going to put on is just the fuel pipe. As you can see, we've got all our ignition lights now, so that's great. I'm just going to pop some fuel in there, set the camera back up, and then we'll go for a first crank and hopefully first start. So we've now popped some fuel in the bike. I went ahead and also checked the oil level and checked the coolant level. That's all okay. I haven't got the cabling connected for the fuel tap, as I mentioned, so I've just turned that onto the on position using my hands here. So the next thing we're going to do is turn the ignition on, put the choke on, turn it over, and fingers crossed it will start. I think the bike's been off the road for at least a year, maybe more. Looking at the MOT history, it looks as if the last MOT that it had was back in February 23, I think. So yeah, it's probably been off the road, as I say, for quite some time. So yeah, fingers crossed we can get this thing started. Here goes nothing. Right, so in the run position, the choke on. Just going to check, make sure there's nothing in the way at all. No, we seem to be okay. Oh. Certainly turns over quick. I can't see any fuel coming out the bottom, so that's a good sign. We're getting a little bit. She's running. Yes. runs pretty well. At this point. So there you go, guys, we've managed to get the bike running and I could not be happier. That is absolutely fantastic, albeit very, very smoky. It did actually reveal that there are quite a few holes in the underside of the exhaust tucked up under here. So what we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to have the tank back off. We'll look at balancing those carbs. We'll look at giving it a bit of a service and a check over. I don't know yet whether I'm going to be able to get hold of that bit of exhaust pipe. If not, for now, I might just put a plate on there. It's not going to be very nice, but underneath you won't be seeing it. So it may well be for the moment that I just do that so I can get it through an MOT and go out and put some miles on it, and then what I can do is look to replace that in the future. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you have, please consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you on the next one.